Our work session of the Borough Assembly is January 30th. No reason to call a roll. Attendance isn't necessary, but for the record, 7 Assembly members here. Utility Director Hagerman is here. We have the reporters from the pilot and FSK and the Borough Manager and Sandy Dixon. So, that being said, Member Michi asked to have this meeting, so we planned it for this evening. We discussed maybe trying to keep it to an hour and a half. We'll see how it goes. There's nobody in the audience. And I want to thank the manager for putting this together. And then, as you could all see on this agenda, he highlighted the topics that Assembly members have expressed interest in. So that's where we're at. And this is in regards to the 3 public meetings from January 2018 on the 8th, 18th, and 27th. And gathered public information on ideas on either cuts to the budget or ways to generate revenue. So that's where we're at. Michi, did you want to say anything in particular?
No, nothing really in particular. It's just, I just kind of felt that since we were kind of going through our budget work sessions, just the budget preparations, that since we had those 3 meetings in December 2017 or so, it might be good to at least let the community know that we looked at some of their suggestions and either decided to move forward with them or figure out that we weren't interested in dealing with them at this time. But just figured it was time that we have a look at these and see if there's any, I don't know if there was consensus, but some type of agreement if we wanted more questions to ask about some of these ideas.
Any other comments or anything in particular?
Where do you want to end up? Where do you want to end up with it, Jeff? What's your thought?
You know, Steve has taken these, and you know, obviously some of us have talked to him about some of these ideas, and I'd be interested to see if we want to continue moving forward with some of these things, or just strike some of these things that we're not going to deal with. Yeah, I just kind of like to either pare this list down a little bit. I don't know if we can do that, but you know, some of the ideas in here were kind of, we've been kicking them around for a while. We're working on them. We're actually working on a few right now. So, I mean, some of these things we can kind of, we can just ignore tonight because, you know, we're still working on the petrol thing. I think we have a work session next week to talk about solid waste and recycling. There's some suggestions there, and those don't need to be talked about tonight. But yeah, I'm just trying to sort out what we want to do with this list. We want to just say we looked at it and be done with it, or whatever. I don't really have a solid plan.
Cool. Since this is a work session, I don't think we could take any formal action.
Correct.
Kick around ideas.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing we talked about back in May of 18 was kicking this down the road and have each of us kind of come up with 3 things we thought we'd like to potentially take action on at some point. Many of these aren't going to be actionable items, and we asked the public to come in and put the sticky notes up as far as in those 3 different meetings, the things they thought might be important or things for us to look at. And I know for myself, I'd be curious to see what, if anything, from this list you guys have come up with that you'd like to take action on at some point. That was the mandate we kind of set ourselves up for at that point.
That was our discussion at the time.
Yeah,
that's
kind of the action we
sat
like.
down and gone through the list and picked 3 just to be up front. But I've looked it over and looked this list over, and like Jeff was saying, some of these are already in the works. You know, like the tiny homes, the rezoning. I think that's something that we're looking at. I don't know about the loans for building or just loans or some more rural property. And there's some good ideas, and I'm glad we are having a discussion since the public took the time to come to these 3 meetings and give their thoughts. So, anything that just sticks out for somebody? I think it's an absolute necessity we need to put on an agenda or something?
I'll lead out since remember thinking about this back in May, and it's kind of crystallized for me a little since then. We've got PEDC and the Chamber coming to, is that our next meeting? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because number 68, it says PEDC needs to develop a credible, focused plan to encourage new business, including and especially non-fisheries related businesses. Better marketing for Petersburg involved in the Chamber, especially how they would receive all TRT funds, what's being done to promote business within Petersburg, and what incentives are being offered. And I know at the next meeting I intend to ask them more specifics on how they're marketing. Are they traveling? Are they going to be going to trade shows? The only growing industry in Alaska as we speak is tourism, not necessarily cruise industry specifically, but tourism. And it's a great opportunity for them to spend a little bit, hopefully make all of us a lot. And that ties also into 76, which is being proactive and letting the quote-unquote the outside world know what a high level of quality of life, quote-unquote, Petersburg has to offer, and make every effort to develop a welcoming business climate to encourage small businesses, utility rates, property, etc. Those are a couple that really jump out at me. There's another one that, more or less in 98, it's very similar. Help the lodges with TRT money to advertise coming to Petersburg for sport fishing. And it can be lodges or just in general, using it to market ourselves. That's new money being circulated into our community that is being spent on local businesses will stay here. So those are three I really intend to talk with the Chamber and PEDC about next Monday, because that's, we talk about different things we can cut, things this, that, and the other, and like we discussed, we're going to have to wait for a while to see what the state does with some of these things, or I think that'll be prudent. We don't have to wait on anything for those. We can find new ways to make money and have people come here and bring money. So for myself, those are the three I'll be focusing on, amongst others.
Yeah, I was involved in the first go-around, but in this list, there's quite a number of them here where people have asked us to raise fees. And I think there's at least 5 in here I was looking at that talking about raising fees for different things. I really would like to see the manager go back and take a look at all our fee structures and to see whether or not we need to increase the fees in all areas at some time, or whether or not we're adequate right now. One of them, for instance, I can think of is ambulance fees. A conversation I had with the hospital was that our fees are way too low for transporting in ambulances. And if, I don't understand all the Medicare structure, but if I did, what they're saying is that we really need to increase those rates because Medicare pays even under what, significantly under up here, and we have a chance to gain some revenues. So one of the things I'd like to see is all the fees looked at. Not tonight, but over time here in the next couple months. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I had a question. Do you remember the backstory on the ambulance Medicare fees and how that came before the Assembly a while ago? Sandy brought that up 3-ish years ago, Sandy. And the long story short is, I'm to be accountable. I argued against it at the time, and we ended up being taken from the table. At the time, my argument, which I don't agree with anymore, I'm in favor of moving this direction, was just because we can increase the fees doesn't mean we need to. And more or less we shelved it after that. Is that about right?
I've tried like 3 times in the last 3 to 5 years. Excuse me. And we are prepared to do it again. I can have it ready for the assembly at not the next meeting, but the following meeting. I think that'd be, from my own perspective, I think that'd be great, because I don't hold that same view I did several years ago. I think this is the time where we need to really look to uncover more of these stones, and that's one of them. But anyway, just to kind of refresh the backstory, remember Lynn?
There was, I seen on this one here, there was
There's 11 of them.
11
Just to tally them up.
and if we ask the manager to do that over the next few months, we could at least take care of a number of these on the agenda as I see it. Whether we raise them or not, that's another question, but I think we need to be looked at.
Well, the timing fits right in with budget time. But I know, like, isn't sanitation looking at a possibility of a rate study after we get the new banner in place, or whatever route we go there?
Yes, water and sewer and potentially electric utility too. it's always a good idea. Every few years, we did the last rate study for water, sewer, and sanitation, 2012.
Well, it's been that long.
Yeah, so it's time to look at it again, and there's good reason, of course, in sanitation right now.
Clarification on that. I didn't think it was 6 years ago. So, I guess it is.
This is a question here, pardon me, thanks. This is number 97, this is a Steve Giesbrecht. Oh no, excuse me, 96. Sue the state of Alaska for not paying municipalities for the cost of the senior property tax exemption. I know they've given us what they call community revenue sharing. Is that come even close to the senior property tax exemptions?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing this. These are
Well, what I was getting at is,
that being said, I think at one time the theory was community revenue sharing kind of offsets what is being paid out in the senior property tax exemption. It's not that way anymore, and likely with this upcoming budget, it may even be more, less money coming to the borough. The challenge is, the state statute says they're supposed to make good. I'm not a lawyer by any stretch, but my guess is if we tried to sue the state, they just delete the entire revenue sharing program and call it a wash. It'd be pretty hard for them to come up with money that they don't have. And then the other side of it is they always have the right to change the law. So they just rewrite the state law and we're back to square one. But it's, again, one of those things that comes up every so often. People say, hey, the state's supposed to pay us for that. Well, yeah, they are. But nobody in the state of Alaska, to my knowledge, has decided to try to push the state on it. Even AML has not gotten very far on that issue. So
I think they did pay it the first couple of years. Now they just consider an unfunded mandate. I think they were going to try to make it so communities could opt out.
We discussed that.
I was going to say, yeah, was that Vernon in the part of that? Mentioned that one time, a couple years ago?
Recall.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a popular thing to put forward.
Well, of course not. You're not going to get reelected if you get rid of that.
I wish they would do that.
Pretty much guaranteed. But if they are going to make that an unfunded state mandate, and we keep getting more and more seniors in this town, I don't know why they're tying our hands that way. So,
purely my opinion, but that's an item that Conference of Mayors, AML, keeping a little bit of pressure, light pressure on them, because if the state ever does get rid of the now called the Community Assistance Program, my guess is this issue is going to pop up big throughout the whole state. Meaning, you're not giving us any money now, and you're still making us give this exemption away. You're going to see more and more communities pretty upset about it. And we'd have better luck if not just Petersburg fighting the battle, but most of the municipalities in Alaska would be interested in it. So yeah, keeping an eye on it. Your AML rep, your Conference of Mayors through Mark, making sure that they're watching for this if it comes up with the AML people. And that's one way to just, again, keep an eye on it, keep it on a list that we're paying attention anyway.
It is a topic of discussion around the room, but Conference of Mayors.
So this isn't on the list, but we've heard over the last couple of days about possibly realizing sales tax from online shopping.
I can kind of speak to that.
Sure.
If that helps you, sure.
Yeah, this would be helpful.
Okay. Literally the day Jody was leaving on vacation, she got a kind of a email text from the city and borough of Sitka, her equivalent in Sitka, with, wow, Amazon's charging sales tax in Sitka. And we thought, okay, it's just Sitka. We really don't know what's going on. Well, guess what? It's not just Sitka. In the last few days, we're starting to see the, ads run. Juno's doing it. It's hitting here. We had a report today that one of our local businesses ordered a couple of things from Amazon and got charged Petersburg sales tax. Now, by the way, I tried to order something myself just to play a game. they didn't charge me any sales tax. I had my wife who just ordered something, checked the invoice, no sales tax on it. So I don't know yet. There's some discussion that it's only Amazon stuff, not anything that's a third-party seller through Amazon. But I can't imagine everything that we've talked about, that all of it was third-party, which is why there's no sales tax. So I don't know the whole story. Jody's, it's on, when she gets back, she's gonna call Sitka and try to find out what the deal. And in the meantime, we're seeing a lot more newspaper articles written about it. So I've asked Cammie that if she hears from anybody in town that can show that it's getting charged, if they don't mind sharing the Amazon bill, that'd be helpful. Also, we're trying to make sure they're calculating it correctly. Amazon has not talked to us. We've not talked to them. We don't really know much. And I tried today to try to find a number to call Amazon corporate, and it doesn't seem to be a way to do it. I don't know, maybe easier to fly to Seattle and go walk into their corporate headquarters. So I don't really have much of an answer other than it appears this is happening. I did ask Cammie if anybody else, and she said the answer is yes. That we've had other businesses from out of state online that have charged sales tax, and up to this point, we have told them no, don't, but it looks like that's changed. One of the big conversations was the state was supposed to get their act together before this affected Alaska. That does not seem to be the case.
I know they're working on it.
I'm surprised this happened, because this was a big discussion in Alaska Municipal
Yeah.
League in the Conference of Mayors. And so if they charge sales tax, do they have the account to deposit it into, or?
Well, and that's the other thing. I want Cammie or our finance group, I want to know when we get paid. No offense, but we've had not only some of our local businesses, but we've had online people charge sales tax before and never pay us. And that one's a big problem. So they're on the lookout to make sure, okay, fine, if you're collecting this, we should start getting checks from, reimbursement for it. We have not as of yet. But it looks like this is going to blow up in a way that we're going to start seeing sales tax charge. Amazon has been very upfront in their press releases. It's not through their third-party sellers, just what they sell. Cammie ran off a few other companies that have tried to pay us. Once Jody gets back, we'll start setting them up as vendors and start saying, yeah, go ahead and start collecting sales tax. But this is really kind of broke loose this last day or two. So we don't have a lot of real good information other than it doesn't look like anybody's going to stop it. It looks like we'll start getting sales tax on a lot of these online sales.
There was a very interesting article in, I think it was yesterday's Juneau Empire on this subject, that Juneau said they were collecting, but it had to do with which vendors and et cetera. But it's a very interesting article if you want to go back and look at the Empire there.
So what's the mechanics for the city collecting that sales tax?
That's part of the problem. We don't know.
Okay.
See, they're not listed as a vendor in our system, so we have no way to, they don't report their sales to us. For example, Hammond Weekon, they do quarterly sales tax reports with us that, it's a whole system of, we have a form, they fill it out, they tell us what their sales are, they write in what the sales tax is supposed to be, and they attach a check. We have none of that for any of these online vendors. I'm not sure we're going to get it. I mean, that's part of, we might start getting checks from Amazon or somebody and have no way to reconcile it. And that will drive our auditor kind of nutty. But this literally has just happened in the last week or so. So there's a whole lot of information we're going to have to get. It's one of the reasons, it may have sounded a little crazy that, Cammie was saying, don't pay us. But that's some of the reason. We're not set up for it. Just getting a check that's for $12 in sales tax isn't good enough. We have to actually, part of our system, we have to know how much was it based on. And we don't get that. So it's going to be kind of a whirlwind summer, I guess, between now and through summer, trying to get some of that information from these online vendors and find out, you know, are they going to give us what we want, or do we have to work with whatever they give us?
So it'd be helpful for city staff if community members called and gave the names of the online retailers that they're buying from that was charging them taxes?
Cammie's working on that right now.
Okay.
Rather than having the entire town
Sure.
call her, we're working it a little bit at a time. She's talking to various people and friends and other borough employees to try to get, what are we seeing? Right now, we have only one instance of somebody charging Petersburg sales tax. We don't have a copy of it to verify anything. So that's what we're looking for. So any of you come across it and want to share it, that'd be great. All right, Brandy.
I was gonna say, I had a business owners complain about the same thing, that their distributor was charging sales tax, and he's like, I don't mind paying the sales tax, but I don't think the borough's receiving it, so
Like a wholesaler is charging them that?
it sounded that way, like a medical wholesaler, I think, or something along those lines, I don't know.
We've had this happen before,
So-
and,
And they told me to bring it to you guys, so.
yeah, no, it'd be great.
Was it sales tax from the place the stuff was shipped from, originated from, or
I
was
don't
it
think, I
local
think it was,
sales
I think
tax?
it was, what he said was local Petersburg sales tax, so. So I don't know, I didn't see, I also did not see the receipt or anything, but that's what I was told.
Well, I'm sure it'll be a topic of discussion next month at both Southeast Conference and AML.
Absolutely.
If it isn't, I'll bring it up. I just made a note. I'll call the appropriate people to put it on the, discussion.
It could be a big deal, I mean, but
It's money.
we don't know. And we also really, it poses a bit of a problem for us for keeping track of it. One of the things we have to do as part of our accounting is justify what we get. And the auditor, if they can't look at total sales and a number, they don't want us to receive, just take a check and assume that it's correct. So we got a whole bunch of work to figure out what's going on, and Amazon very well may not want to give that to us. So I don't know. We'll know more as every day that goes by, probably.
It's in process.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 6 is about selling more borough property. What does it take to make that happen?
I sent out an email earlier, hopefully everybody had a chance to look at it. I did this, and thanks to Brandy for talking about property and making sure that's on here. She's 100% correct. This is a topic in town all the time. What we have is not a complete list. I know this is going to sound really weird, but many borough-owned properties don't even have parcel numbers assigned and have never been assessed. So when we did that auction, when we put 3 pieces of property up for sale, it took Jody and Liz about 3 months to prepare for that, for 3 pieces of property. We've got to fix that problem. So I've told Liz, it's a big project, it'll take a while, let's get on it, which is, we need a list of all the borough-owned property, and then make sure it's got a parcel number, make sure we've got the deed, that was part of the problem too. Shows up on DNR's website that we own it, but we can't find a deed anywhere. In some cases, DNR couldn't find a deed. So we got to work through all that, and eventually what we want to do is come to the assembly with a list that says, parcel number 1 is the Power and Light building. So yeah, we own it, can't sell it. Parcel number 2 is a lot over here that we could sell. And, provide something valuable to the assembly that says, here's all of the stuff that we could sell after going through all the process with recommendations from staff that says, we should sell this one, we should hold this one. And, as an example, there are property in town that the state gave us that have deed restrictions on them that we can't sell at all. They look like really good lots, except the state has said that has to be kept as open space or sold or used only as a park. So we'll have to track that stuff down and find out, are these deed restrictions still in place? It's a big research project. We need to bring that to the assembly. You guys need to approve the list. We could then go through the process of putting it out for auction. I'm recommending that we also include, where the assembly approves, we if it goes through the auction and doesn't sell, we do what's called over-the-counter, which means anybody can walk in here and buy it basically without having to go back through an auction process. Well, we don't advertise that. So what we ought to do is offer up to our 2 real estate agents or offices, hey, we'll pay a standard commission if you market this property. They can put it out on MLS, and now you have a little wider spread. So, but the assembly has to approve that, and we're a long ways away from getting to that point. But I mean, it's a great idea to answer the question. Right now, we don't own as much property as sellable property that people think we do. But that shouldn't stop us from going through the list and making it clean enough that the assembly can talk about it. But it'll take probably till the fall before we're ready.
We've done that over-the-counter sales before, correct? Is that
Yes.
what you said, John?
Yeah.
Like if I had a subdivision, I think I had some lots that, if I recall right.
And that's one of the challenges, like airport subdivision, people see those lots and go, oh, well, Borough owns a lot of property up there. Yes, we do. But you've got 2 streets that are actually all developed, all those lots are sold, and you got, what, 2 or 3 streets? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of lots in between the airport subdivision and the ball field area. A lot of lots that are platted, but aren't developed.
Yeah, no roads, no utilities. So we'll show up as owned by the borough, but we can't sell those until there's at least a road in there and the utilities as well. So that's the kind of notes we have to have in a list so we know what we need to do in order to sell it, and we can explain it to people when they see that lot. Well, this is why this is not sold, because there's not a road there.
So there's another couple series of questions, is what you're asking is whether or not, 1, we want to sell it, 2, whether or not you're willing to put the investment in those platted ones to take it,
Potentially.
whether or not you can get it back out, that's another,
Yeah, I mean,
there's some other.
and that goes, like I said,
way down the road, yeah.
one of the initial level, here it is. Do we have a deed? Does it have a parcel number? Do we have the property description? And has it been assessed? But, I mean, just that alone gets it on a list.
Right.
Then we have to go through the process of making sure, all right, it's a piece of property that we can sell or want to sell. There's going to, I don't think we want to sell Sandy Beach Park, yet that's going to show up on the website as a borough-owned piece of property. So we have to go through that and identify everything before the assembly can make good decisions on it.
So I would assume all that area up by the airport, behind Clinton, either towards Sandy Beach, whatever direction it is, the ball field, that's, how would I say it, that's all zoned then, right? In this new zoning, is that zoned?
That is, I'm not sure if those are changing, but those were all residential property, and I don't expect them to be changed. I think there was some property up there that the hospital at one time wanted to kind of earmark as if they built a new hospital, earmark that land. So that would be a decision the assembly would have to make when we get that far. But we're not there yet. I've got to give you better information than what we have right now.
There's a lot of more property up there behind Lake Street. There's several roads that are already platted up there.
A lot of lots.
So do we know what it costs to just put in, not necessarily a pioneer road, but a road that would be plowable?
Borough standard, in other words.
Yeah, kind of up to standards, yeah, because, I was just thinking if the lots were the cost of putting in the utilities in the road, then those lots go on the roll and we start collecting property tax from when people build houses there, kind of stuff. So it's basically, they kind of cover the cost to develop the properties instead of above and beyond. I mean, is that something that we should think about, just to make it affordable and develop, these things for people to be able to start utilizing that land and putting them on the rolls?
That's the theory of developing property, is you put in the improvements and sell the lots for enough money to get your investment back and potentially make some money. It's expensive to develop around here, and it's all variable. A road, in Muskeg that's 3 feet deep is a lot less money than a road through 20-foot deep Muskeg, because we're going to get rid of all that Muskeg and make it a road that's going to last forever. It'll just be better all the way around. So yeah, anywhere, well, probably shouldn't even guess, but it's probably between $500 and $700 a linear foot for road with water sewer in it.
Call it 1,000.
Well, and there's other options too. I mean, Carl could probably speak to it better than I can, but how the airport subdivision was developed. That was a joint venture in a sense between the borough and Tlingit Haida Housing. And the borough kept every other lot. Tlingit Haida got the others. And didn't they pay for the majority of the infrastructure to go
Paid
in?
for all the development, and they received some property in return, which they sold, used for their own purposes, and the city at the time was able to sell the remaining lots and keep those on.
So I mean, that's a win for everybody.
Did those go on the tax rolls in right away after they were sold?
Yeah, we sold.
The borough lots did, the Tlingit Haida one, they had, I think it was a 5-year deal where they paid no property taxes.
Okay, I wasn't
Yeah,
aware of that.
yeah, I pulled it the other day. But even then, I mean, that's still, it got developed. I mean, that's, the big expense was all the infrastructure that goes in. So it's not always just that we have to come up with the money. Potentially, we could make another deal with someone like that.
Either way, you have to do that, though, get the development in. Otherwise, you end up in a situation like we had with Alberti and Miller behind, Pyrocken Road, where those are all, originally, like, those are undeveloped lots completely, and with no utilities, and kind of, pretty much complete junk show ever since. The owner is paying, giving people honey buckets there, and taking out the muskeg every day, et cetera. Not all, of course, I'm being generic, but I know it's an issue that's been, you gotta develop no matter what, if you're gonna take that route.
But again, once we have our act together on all of it, then we can look at things like that and talk to people like Tlingit Haida or even PIA. Barry, when he was the tribal chairman, was very interested in doing something like that. I've not had a conversation with Tracy. But, there might be other people, there might be private developers that are interested in something like that. But they have the ability to do infrastructure cheaper than what we pay with markup, so.
Assembly may not know this, but in that subdivision you just mentioned, Pat Weaver's the owner. She actually did just pay to install water and sewer and for part of that subdivision. And so actually we've got a real life example going on right now of how this works. And we'll get records if she sells any lots at this point. So it's a good test case really for how if the community is, what it costs to develop a Muskeg lot.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is there any, like, I know if we want to build something on our place, we take a rod and we try to see where the solid ground starts. When you go ahead and plat those pieces of property and give us ideas, what's available for sale, is there going to be some sort of bathymetrics, for lack of a better word, done on that piece of property where a guy kind of walks it every 50 feet and drops a rod and says, that's going to cost you X amount of dollars because you got to excavate this much to do? Is there any of that kind of information that we
part
can
of the
get?
process? We haven't done this
Right.
a very long time, so,
Right.
if this is the direction that Assembly wants to go, I think that's totally reasonable and probably the best way to figure out what the most cost-effective area is to develop. We don't want to focus on the area that's got a 20-foot muskeg. If there's another area that's got
If you're programming for road, exactly. No-brainer.
Because I would think that this airport subdivision, because it's up on a knoll there, that must have been a unique piece of property. Probably the muskeg was not that deep, or not that deep there. Seems like it might have been on harder ground,
I can't remember, but I do remember that Hammer and Wecon, when they built the foundation for that store, it was 20 feet deep there.
Wow, no
So
kidding.
They
That was
lost the
the
machine.
lost tobacco almost in the muskeg. When they did that.
I wouldn't have thought
So
that.
you never know.
I wouldn't have thought that with the way it was like that on that knoll.
Where the fire hall is built, it was anywhere from I think 7 to 9.5.
Oh, that's great.
Right across the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Right across the street.
Yeah, so you just never know.
So
Yeah, 'cause I'm really
it's
kind of curious as to what Betty Street's gonna look like. We all know where that is. It's just up there by the Assembly of God Church that goes across the Muskeg. I drove up there, and man, that's got a nice view of the coast drain there. Because there's no trees in the way. You're kind of out on the Muskeg there. That'd be a great piece of property up there somewhere. Gotta get that street.
There's your opportunity.
Number 7 talks about capturing income from the people who visit here in the summer. Is that something that would have to go to a vote of the public if we were gonna raise sales taxes?
Well, yeah, it depends on what that means. I mean, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth.
Sure.
But, I mean, capture income from summer transient population, capture income from out-of-town retirees. That was the two items that somebody wrote. So it could be a summer sales tax increase. The answer is yes, that has to go to the voters. It could be, Liz Carrera and I were joking around one time, maybe we can charge admission to Petersburg, like, for the cruise ships, like they do on a Disneyland. Hey, if you're going to get off the boat, doesn't matter if you're going on an excursion or not, we're going to charge you $10 just to step on dry land. I mean, it depends on how you want to go about capturing it. You could raise TRT taxes higher. You could, do a seasonal sales tax. I'm not put a bunch of other smarter people in the room and come up with different ideas. How do you capture that income? Could be any number of things.
Well, you could end up in a situation like the state did with charging higher fees for out-of-state fishing permits. They had to pay back a lot of money on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's part of the challenge with that is what's legal and, what are the ideas, then what's legal, and then back it up. Another thing, what will the voters approve and what can our system handle? I mean, Taylor's talked about several times about a seasonal sales tax. Part of our challenge is our current sales tax system won't handle that. So we're having to research technology so that we could actually handle that kind of an option, and that's in the works, but it'll be a while before the vendor gets the module done. But anyway, I mean, that's a great idea. It depends on what specifics the idea.
I've got one for Carl. We can talk about it more at a sanitation work session. I know this is more Chris's venue at this point, but how's the diversion rate in the recycling world?
Well, the last time I was involved, we got up to a point and it pretty much flattened out and stayed there, about 18 to 19% in Petersburg.
All the higher we got it?
Yep, and I'm pretty confident it's probably still there, although Chris would.
Yeah, similar there-ish.
That's the percentage of people that are recycling?
No, that is the amount, that is the weight that's being diverted from the solid waste stream. So 19% of the 2,400 tons that we have a year, 19% of that is being recycled.
What percentage do you think we could increase if we had everybody recycle everything we possibly could? Just guessing.
Well, if you're an extremely strict recycler, and we have a pretty liberal recycling program through the Republic, EPA stated many years ago that it's possible to achieve 70% diversion. I don't know that that's very realistic for Petersburg, Alaska.
Carl, what was the original goal, like 28? Somewhere in there? I forget.
Well, it was actually a 3-step goal to hit 30%, and then long term, we're not there by a long shot.
Only way, in my opinion, to get to those kind of numbers is you make it mandatory. And you start, kind of the penalty approach, unfortunately. I mean,
No, and it works. Whenever I take a stay at an Airbnb in Seattle, like, very nice host always tells me exactly where the compost is, right where the, they make it happen. And because they get fined if it doesn't happen that way. And consequently, they have very, very high diversion rate. I'll talk more about it at the other meeting. I was kind of brief curiosity on that. Thank you, Carl.
While we're on this real quick, I was hoping that we could do some sort of PSAs or something. Because I'm I try to recycle, but I was just told that I wasn't even doing some things right. So, and, if there could be like quarterly pamphlet that goes out, something just to tell us what's recyclable, how to, what to do, what level do we have to rinse out things, just something to help us out because.
Yeah, the reminder of sorts.
Right.
yeah, not to pick on the lady who wrote a lot of that recycling stuff up. It was one lady that, that you see lots of words in here. One of the things that I thought that jumped out at, Chris and I think Carl saw it too, which was not enough information going out. So to Randy's point, we would have a pretty difficult time going to a weight rate model where we're weighing your trash and charging you different by how much the weight is. That's almost impossible for us to do. But getting information out is something we can definitely do. And if we're gonna keep doing this, we're gonna have to get a lot better at who did the video? Wasn't the school?
School.
Yeah, I mean, did a real great recycling video on what can you recycle and how do you prepare it and all stuff. So that was a huge step in the right direction. We just have to get it out there more, and as Brandy said, something a lot more frequent. People forget.
Even right now, with the way the rates are, it still saves us money to get it out of the waste stream.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not making a pile off of it.
But like, I didn't think about, Steve brought up like the oil from your pizza box.
Pizza box,
I
yeah.
can't throw that part away, or recycle that part.
I had
I'm
the
like,
same
oh,
problem
didn't even
once.
think about it, just, So, just different things like that would help.
Compostable though,
There you go.
Burnable.
that
Yeah.
too.
But, here I'm just like the bad recycler throwing it in the bin, I didn't know.
But they've been showing little videos around town.
Right,
about
but
recycling.
that means that you have to be proactive, and not everyone is that
Sure.
proactive, so.
Correct.
And that's the problem, is that a lot of people will do it if you just constantly put it in front of their face and remind them, but a lot of people aren't gonna go out and seek it out to do it.
Taylor, were you mentioning the idea of like putting something on top of the can, like the big
I thought there already was. Like on top of my can, I thought there was a piece of paper that
Came with the can.
Did it come with the can, or is it because you drew up so much
Oh,
stuff, they finally just nailed you on it and just put a sticker on yours? I don't have one on mine.
Mine's, I could have sworn my can's always
Almost
had
chain
that paper on it.
Well, and then it depends on who you ask, if you can throw, like, if the grocery bags are recyclable or not. Some, some say absolutely not, and then I've heard that they are, so.
I can tell you quite honestly.
They are?
But they have to be, it's like a
Bundle.
bag of bags.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
can't just
it's a
throw
bundle.
individual grocery bags.
See?
You have to fill a bag and tie it, and then you can put it in there.
Quite honest, I don't
Really
think
good.
I can or
I
can't
might
throw
fill
away.
up my can this week then.
Yeah, I mean, I end up with bags full of bags and lots of them. And I just have all the bags in town are in these bags in my pantry now.
And you can certainly take those
Both the
bags.
grocery stores are
Yeah, you
taking
can take those to
bags,
the
which
grocery
is
store,
actually,
and they'll take them.
we tell people, yeah.
Yeah, they'll take them.
Saves you having to bag and bag and bag. You just take it there and stuck with it there.
Ours go to the library, the wave shelter.
Anyway,
That was just a,
So wasn't there an insert that went out in some piece of mail that we got like last week or the week before? I think it had to do with recycling.
oh, so clearly I didn't check that mail.
I think I might have recycled it.
I was gonna say, it may not have made it home.
yeah, no, I'm not sure.
Number 15, it says I would pay a nominal fee for a business license. Is that a city business license or is that the state?
Must be.
We actually, by the way, we actually don't do business licenses.
Yeah, that's
Peter.
what I was wondering.
We do, what people think of as a business license here is your sales tax application to register with us so we can put you in our system so we can collect sales tax from you. So, I included that in the statement about fees, meaning research it and find out. I'll tell you, I wouldn't want to be collecting a whole lot of money there, just from the perspective, we don't want to we want more businesses, we don't necessarily want to charge them to have a license to have a business, but, I mean, part of the research on this would be, what are other communities doing, how much is it, why do they do it? I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, if we're going to charge fees, I'd kind of like to know why. Meaning, what are we getting from it? So if we're saying business, we need a business license from you because we want to make sure about this, this, and this, then okay, that's justified. If it's just because we're trying to collect a fee from you, I'm a little less interested in it. But again, that's a research thing, and that's why it's highlighted. I kind of included it in the statement about look at the various fees and stuff.
On number 17, I kind of was reading all through all these lists here, and I was kind of able to pick out the personalities and how it was written, and maybe who might have said it. But, number 17, did Jody put this one in?
No,
Change the investment strategy.
she would be the last person. to
Risk
put that
factor
in.
for investments. Who would know that information?
Most of your community members, Kurt.
But who would know that information? How do they know that our investments are not?
Okay, we have two different risk factors on investments that we do. Okay, so for everybody in the room, the economic fund We used an outside broker, investment counselor, to do that for us. So, anyway, it doesn't matter. And they are instructed to take a little bit, we take a little bit more risk on the economic fund than we do on everything else. All the borough's fund money, meaning the electric fund, the general fund, incredibly conservative. We're not going to lose on that money. And I would not recommend changing the investment strategy on those.
Is it keeping up with inflation, those investments?
You'd have to ask Jody. I haven't seen the latest report on it. But again, the economic fund, because it's separate and distinct, is invested a little bit riskier. If you look at borough money, it's not in the stock market. It's CDs and risk pools, things that are very, very conservative. Jody needs to be in this room, and she'll give you really good arguments to not do that. What happens if the stock market goes down and you've got your general fund invested in small cap stock market? Probably not a real good thing.
Number 18, which says develop a plan to utilize the 14,000 acres of land. Is that something that we would give to planning and zoning, or would we come up with the parameters of what we would like them to do?
Once we get the land,
Yep.
and that's kind of the challenge of the millennium, I guess. I would highly recommend that. I mean, that's a very good idea. Once you know the land you've got, and just because the state says they're giving us 14,000 acres doesn't mean we've got it in our hands. But once it's in our hands, it would be a really good thing to task someone with what's the plan. Back to my conversation about what do you do with borough and property. What do you want this land to be? What do you want to sell? What do you want to keep? I mean, there's land that we may get in and around Thomas Bay. You may not want to sell that. You may want to keep that and set it aside for people to hunt on. I mean, where you don't, sell it for cabins, or you may want to.
There's other lands we had in there that had rock pits on them already developed that we'd want to.
Yeah, the state won't give us that one.
They may not, but we can argue. But anyhow, then there's also some that has strong waterfront that I think there's a question about what we want to do with it. Right now, if we've got some of those, I'd recommend we don't sell those because they're excellent recreation for the future.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Get ownership.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, we have a long ways to go, I think, before we get ownership. There's a real question here.
But, I mean, the big thing there is a misconception piece, which is we're getting 14,000 acres. Well, have we got it yet? I mean, and it's hard for people that aren't living this to understand why. Well, the state gave it to us. Why don't we have it yet? Well, I think, Mark, you might even remember this, or Bob. I mean, there are boroughs formed before Petersburg that still don't have their land.
There's 4 of them that still do not have their land.
So this is this may age out all of us, and our descendants will be the ones dealing with the plan. But
The other side of that coin too, Steve, is that they can put restrictions on it.
Yes, they
That
can.
we have to go back and fight, and that's another battle after that comes forward.
Yeah.
Well, Stedman's office is keeping an eye on it, and they'd like to see it, happen sooner than later, to keep our paperwork on top of the pile, not at the bottom of the pile.
I mean,
Change
again,
your command or DNR might,
yeah, perfectly, great statement, 100% correct. It's just the timing it's not going to happen. It's not going to solve our budget issues in any way, shape, or form. Not right now, anyway.
I was wondering, I've been asked before, and I have asked on number 1, there's a code or some really good reason why you can't sell fireworks inside the city limits or.
Sandy might be able to answer that. I mean, I can speak to, the fireworks are not allowed in the city limits. Am I correct, everyone? But that doesn't mean you can't sell them. I mean, but we would have to change the ordinance. That's an example. If you change an ordinance to say you can sell them, but you cannot use them, and if the person or anybody operating this fireworks stand opened up something inside Service Area 1, we'd get sales tax, but we're getting sales tax on it outside service area 1 now anyway. So, it's just kind of maybe we'd get more, maybe there'd be higher sales if it was closer to town and in town. I mean, maybe that's the logic behind it.
And then as far as setting them off, I'm well aware that fireworks are getting set off
Figured.
inside the city limits. And the argument that, well, if you allow them in the city limits, then there's a higher possibility of fire. Well, there already is right now, because they're being done anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, you could, I mean, if you wanted to make them legal inside the city limits to set off, that's something the assembly could consider.
So, I guess how do we want to move forward with this? It's nice we're having this discussion, going over this. A lot of these things we're moving forward on. I mean,
Right, there's several that had to do with the garbage, solid waste, recycling that we'll be talking about at a later date, so we don't need to.
we made some kind of provision for building tiny homes. If that means zoning rules.
And I don't know if you rest, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, this loan program, is that even something that the PEDC could, make that?
I don't know. I mean, traditionally, PEDC takes this tack of don't want to compete with existing businesses. So that would be a direct competition to our 2 banks and the credit union. So I don't know. I mean,
That makes sense.
but by the way, it is done in other places, but we have a small number of financial institutions as compared to a bigger community, or it may matter less.
And that one's worded pretty vaguely too, to attract younger professionals. There's not a lot of specifics attached to that either, for that matter.
Didn't BEDC have some kind of program going for seed money? Those,
Not anymore.
They did for businesses, but I don't think they do anymore.
no, but I mean, I thought they had another little program going, more recently.
The fire sprinkler program that expired in December. And no
This
one
had
took
to do with
advantage of
helping
that.
people get boat loans and things like that, to kind of give them down payment money, kind of things.
I think there was a new state one for fishermen. Like I think they had one like 10 years ago. I just read that there was something they were trying to do again to get young fishermen or young guys into the. But I don't know.
I remember hearing that.
So number 81, about charge for a credit card processing fee.
Yes,
Are we already doing that?
yes.
Okay.
Not on everything, not on everything, but we are testing it now on property tax,
Okay.
and not so far so good.
Say that again, not so far?
No, so far so good. I mean, knock on wood, so far so good. We had to change our credit card vendor to make this all work. Example, I mean, I think we spend 30, 40 grand a year in credit card fees, so it's not a tiny number. So we are testing that. I think it's working fine. We'll continue to, go through maybe a cycle or two to see it and then make a decision. We have not put it out on utility bills, harbor mortgage, things like that, we have not started doing that yet. We may not. It kind of depends on what we learn with the property tax piece.
But I thought you could pay your utility bills with your credit card.
You can pay it with a credit card, but we're eating the cost.
Okay.
Yeah. Every time somebody uses a credit card, particularly around here, if he wants to use their Alaska Airlines card, that's a signature card, which means they charge most stores 3 or 4%. We got a pretty good deal, so it's less than that, but it adds up. So $1,000 utility bill or $500 utility bill, 2% is every month can add up, and the borough eats those fees.
So it's cheaper to pay with my Alaska Airlines card then?
Opposite. It is here. I mean, if you pay with your Alaska Airlines card at Lee's Clothing, they're paying a higher fee for that than if you're paying just a regular old MasterCard. So those are signature cards, and they can charge up to 4.5%, where other cards are less than that. But we all love mileage, and it's kind of. But so we have a lot of people who use those cards here. But because of our volume, we get a deal from the credit card processor. So it's a little bit less than what other people in town would have to pay. Anyway, but it adds up, and it's one that we'll test.
Most vendors probably have that figured into their markup,
Yeah.
I would think. A thought.
I know, Steve, you and I've talked about 79 before. You want to, should we elaborate a little bit on where they're doing this in other places in the country?
There's a couple of different ways. I mean, doesn't really explain it well. I mean, we have offered that up for the school. Many places in other parts of the world do it for all, what you'd call municipal buildings, so schools, hospitals, things like that. And it's done in a lot of different ways. It could be a lower rate, it could be free, and not really free, but one thing that they saw in Texas, for example, would be they take all the municipal usage, and we wouldn't charge the library for their electric use, or their water use, or their garbage use. But all of that would be captured and then refactored back into your rates for everybody else. So, Brandy and Taylor at their house, Mark's house and my house, we're actually paying a portion of our bill is a power cost adjustment that's an add-on to make up for, not the library not paying their electric bill. So it's done in many places. I know it's moving money around, and it's really hard to explain to people. But
the flip side is that we're paying for it anyway. I mean, through my property tax and sales tax, I'm giving money to you, the general fund. The general fund gives the money to the library. The library gives the money to Carl, and then Carl, I mean, it's just kind of like, you know what I mean? I mean, it's cleaner the way we're doing it now, but it would be more transparent if we were to do it that way, the other way.
I think another one on here that's similar in nature is you could charge the utilities payment in lieu of taxes. It's a way, and that's where, Power and Light has a certain amount of assets that has a value to it, and they're not paying a property tax on that. You could, charge them a property tax in a sense on their capital assets. There's all sorts of ways to do that. I mean, the key issue is what you're doing is you're using your utilities as a way to reallocate money into your general fund, is what it amounts to. And you don't always have to hurt the utilities. You can true it up by raising the rates for everyone else. But again, I mean, that tends to not be very popular. It is a method that could be done.
Someone has to pay for the power.
Eventually, somebody has to pay for it, right? I mean, you could have Power Light or the water department give it away for free, to the police department, but that's going to show up in the rate study. So rates have to go up for everybody else to account for that. Anyway,
would they have to go up, Steve, or would they just be adjusted? In other words, I mean, it's just instead of being in your left pocket, it comes out of your right pocket.
If they got it for free, then rates would have to. Well, that would be depending on the rate study. Power and Light makes a profit on what they sell, so that they can take that money and then do other projects with to make sure that we have the money to fix the turbines or, fix the downline, whatever. So you can short them so they're not, quote, making as much. But eventually, what do you do then when they have a big project, they don't have the money set aside for that? I mean, I guess I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I mean, this is done frequently in other places as a way to collect money and get it into the general fund, who particularly always has a problem paying for things. I mean, hard to get the library to pay enough to keep the library open. So there are ways to do that, but it's hard to explain to people. Really difficult.
I know this one's not on the list, but you and I talked about this, and I really like the idea is that if for some reason, if the state gives us the opportunity to take control of the senior property tax exemption, and if somebody can't afford to pay the property tax, it's just kind of like a reverse mortgage. You know, they have that liability against their home. They don't have to pay it out of their pocket immediately, but when that house is sold, then that liability that they had incurred then comes to the general fund. So if the state ever does get rid of that senior housing tax exemption, that's one way that we can approach it for those people that can't afford to pay property tax.
Called a senior, property tax deferment program. It's done in many states.
That way, that's just something that might be on the horizon for us. Is all. That's the only reason I brought it up. Is just
No, it's. I pitched it to JKT one a couple years back, saying, "Hey, if you guys really want to get rid of that, clearly you don't want to commit political suicide. You have to offer something else, and this is something other states have done, but not a lot of interest at this point in Alaska, but locally potentially to be done."
Well, I talked to one of Dunleavy's aides over the Christmas break there for about 20 minutes, and one of the things they were talking about was, reducing the amount of community revenue assistance, or without community assistance. And I told him, I said that if you're going to do that, then because that was in lieu of senior property tax exemptions, which I assumed that was the reason for it, was that you're going to have to get rid of that and then give the control over to the community so that we can, which is something that they've been talking about, but nobody's, like you say, you're not going to get reelected if you come out and you say that, but if the governor comes in and just says, sorry, we just don't have the funds anymore, we got to find $1.4 billion that we can cut, that's going to be one of them. And so we're going to have, we should probably be prepared.
We'll know more in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I already heard we're going to lose, 30-some-odd% in school funding.
Yeah, I don't know where that figure came from. Well, I know
It was on the radio.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That was Devin who said that.
Yeah.
It could be, on the radio.
Yeah.
Right, it's not pretty.
No, it doesn't look pretty. But I think we'll be fine. I think we've got a lot of ideas, and I think there's a lot of creative thought that we'll be able to protect the most vulnerable, of our population, but yet still survive. Petersburg has a way of doing that.
So number 3, you had increased parking permit costs in the harbor.
I'm sorry, which one?
93.
Well, then,
92, yeah.
I threw that in with the whole fee thing,
Yep.
and I've not asked Flo when's the last time they've looked at that. That's part of what.
I don't know that I've paid for this sticker in the middle harbor. If I do, they just tax it on my bill.
No, it comes with your mortgage.
goes in
You get the
Yeah, it's a little, for your mortgage, you get it, and then, but you can't park there more than 24 hours, so it's not like I'm getting a free parking spot for having a stall down there.
somebody in here wrote that, charge more for parking fines and let the harbor do it. They're really good at it. Well,
That was Richard Burke who wrote
They
that.
absolutely hate it. They would much
are
rather
good
not.
at it.
They just absolutely hate it. They said it's a waste of their time. And when you think about how much money they pay those guys per hour to go out and write a ticket,
Well,
but it seems like somebody they can write a ticket.
But here's a trade-off to that idea. When I first got here, we had a part-time summer seasonal parking
Yeah, I
attendant
remember.
that walked all over town, including the harbors, and wrote parking tickets.
The dog catcher too, wasn't it?
Yes, she was.
Wouldn't be
Yeah.
bad, I think.
Was it Jenna?
Yes, exactly. And one of our early budget cuts was to basically say, you know what, we're not making enough to cover her salary doing this, and we stopped it. But, you raise the fees, the parking costs, or the violation costs high enough, you get it to where it either makes money or at least covers the cost. You can go back to something like that and, free up the harbor people that are doing it now.
Is there a limit on how much you can charge for parking?
I don't know.
Fines?
That's a
They're
good
like
question.
$10. It's almost worth it to park all day.
I'm bringing up, you see people with 3 or 4 yellow stickers down.
Well, I think I did that to my dad.
They just came up from, they just came back from Seattle.
Forgot to
$10
pick it
an
up.
hour.
Like, isn't that's just guys who are out on the boat, right? And then,
That
oh, you
might
parked
think
here
that-
too long because
I
your
don't-
trip
I don't
got
know.
delayed for what various reason, then you come back to town. It's like, oh shit, that's right. It was only supposed to be a 3-day trip, and then the weather came up, and now I've got a whole bunch of tickets I get to pay for.
Yeah.
Or I did this in the summertime. I ended up getting held up. I'm out for 4 or 5 days. And then, for whatever reason, I got held up and kept out about 3 or 4 days longer than I was supposed to be, and I came back to town, and one of my crew members' truck, which was in
The boot?
5-day parking or something,
Oh,
ended up
okay.
with 2 tickets on it that he didn't want to pay because high school made us stay out, but we weren't supposed to be out that long because the schedule's pretty consistent except this one time. So, I mean, you can push back on that too.
Oh, sure, I mean, I think, hey, no matter what we do on the fee area, we will get pushed back. I mean, whether it's,
Fees are one thing, but fines,
I don't think anybody's talking about making them like $100 ticket or anything like that either. That'd be, I would expect a gross pushback from something like that.
well,
We would
and
deserve it.
I'm not the most popular guy when it comes to parking stuff because I've taken a pretty laissez-faire attitude about it, to be honest with you. I mean, when we're short police officers, particularly like we were last summer, having them run around writing parking tickets is not a great use of their time. But it upset some of our shopkeepers that we weren't doing that, and so there's valid reasons to keep people from not staging their car there for 2 weeks. But again, it's not cheap. It's not free to have the guys do parking stuff because what do you mean? I lived down south in an apartment complex many years ago, and if you parked in the wrong spot, there wasn't any warning. You came back and your car was gone. It was towed off, and you had a $250 impound fee plus another extra per day. I mean, parking in many places is about that. There's no quick warning, or I don't think we really want or need to go there. Is kind of my point. But
Have we heard anybody suggest that they'd be willing to pay a monthly fee or maybe a summer fee for parking in the harbors?
yeah,
I mean, have you heard anything like that? I know I don't get away with it,
No, but, for anybody.
Yeah, for anybody, yeah. If, say, a fisherman wants to,
For those that sell out in a hurry.
yeah.
Well, but then the other people aren't gonna get a price, so.
yeah.
Well, I mean, they're gonna do it anyway, they're gonna park down there anyway, but if he, Taylor, if he could have bought his crewman could have bought a permit for $100, let's say, and been able to park his
they
vehicle.
do that in Juneau.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they do that, don't they?
Well,
They do that.
part of it is proximity.
So you can
Yeah.
buy a parking permit, not for the parking lot down, or can you, short term, is the
Harris
parking
Harbor,
lot at the harbor.
Base.
This is in Ock Bay.
Oh.
So you can buy I think it's a 4, or maybe it's a 1-year thing. Anyways, you buy it, but you don't park at the harbor, you park in the college parking lot up the road, which is a ways away, but when you don't live there, what's a mile walk? If you know your truck can be there all summer long, I don't know if you've got any parking
Well,
lots.
I floated that idea with some folks a couple years back about behind Parks and Rec. I mean, that parking lot never fills out.
No.
And say, hey, buy a permit from us, we'll let you park up there, and, you just have to worry about your walk up or down the hill or a ride. And no one was interested. It's too far away.
Well, yeah, I just wondered what kind of interest there was, because I wonder how many cars you could park on that Union 76 lot. And if you charged $100 for 3 months.
Nice.
That's a different discussion. We talked about that Monday.
No, I'm just saying.
Maybe.
No, I'm just saying,
Maybe.
I mean, if we're just kind of banding things around.
Yes.
I didn't buy it, my cousin did. I know it wasn't that expensive. I think it was
We were paying $75 to park out at the,
downtown.
no, this was in Ock Bay there, beside Erickson's place, just to the north there, where they have their
Over the
ramps.
drive down.
Yeah, the drive down is.
Oh, they had parking spots there?
Yeah, and no, there was only like 5, and I know the harbor master, so we were able to buy one stall there for $75 a month.
Oh, see, but that's
A month.
right at the drive.
Yeah.
It's not a mile walk.
Gated,
Gated.
yeah, and we had a fob, and we had a fob, but we were so in and out, we were only using it once a week, so, but it was.
Yeah, I don't know that you pay for parking if you are downtown in Juneau, since we're talking about this topic. You just go and tell the harbor master you're gonna be there for a month, you buy a month mortgage, and they give you a sticker, you put it in
Yeah,
your window.
if you get the mortgage, then it's with it,
Comes
but
with
we
it,
didn't
yeah.
have that.
But some thoughts,
Yeah.
I bet you a lot of guys would be more than happy to pay for parking, for the summertime at least, in the South Harbor. if there was a place close by that they could park it,
Yeah, if I can double ticket.
without getting a
stick it
ticket,
out.
yeah.
Yeah,
Without even having to think about it.
give me a little sticker, I'll slap on my window.
Yeah, yeah. That's something we could float.
Do a lot of people besides the assembly use the assembly chambers?
Yes.
Like you're on
A lot.
106 says charge for the assembly chambers.
CPAP, Forest
Forest Service, SEPA, Insura, Board of Fish,
That takes a lot of time for the staff to set
Yeah.
up.
Coast Guard. I'm running out, but I'm missing some people.
And we don't charge for that?
We don't charge. It takes, for example, I mean, this was quick because I didn't do anything fancy, but for SEPA, took Debbie 2.5 hours to set up and about the same to take it back down. And we don't get paid for that. I mean, so all the time that she's doing that, she's not doing your minutes for your meeting and we have no one else.
No break on our power rate?
Not yet, anyway. So, Forest Service is somewhat easy to deal with, except, for example, when they have their big meetings in here, this room, entire room is full, and we have to pay for extra custodian because the bathrooms get really messed up and the trash overflows. Sandy
They
can
were
speak.
doing it at the fire station. It
Yeah.
was terrible.
Yeah, so we don't currently pass that on. I've been threatening for a while, just because it's so much work to set up for it. So it wouldn't really be about a money thing, it's more about just, can we recoup our costs?
Staff time.
Is that something that you can do by yourself, or do you need council for assembly?
Probably do it by myself. There's no ordinance, or, it's just an internal policy.
But it doesn't help you in the amount of time you have to do
No.
this stuff, so.
No.
I mean, you collect the fee, but you don't.
That's part of the problem, and why we've held off. It's like, again, we're not trying to make money. I mean, it's more about,
Well, we don't want
It's
to
just-
lose money.
yeah, and so, we could, if we charged enough to maybe cover somebody's time, but it still means she's not doing her regular job, she's in here moving, like to set up for SEPA, we have to move tables from the downstairs police station up through the elevator one at a time, and then in reverse, and we've done that before with other groups. I made the statement to the SEPA folks when they were last here, because they brought Sharon, got her name right?
Head secretary.
She shows up today. I said, next time you need to come the day before so you can set all this up so Debbie doesn't have to do it. And she didn't like me very much after that. But, I was being fairly serious. It's a big deal when these folks use it. And, like I said, we've got one male, one female bathroom. And when you add 40 people to this room and they're here for 3 days, I don't know if you know about our janitorial coverage in this building. They come Wednesday night and do the bathrooms. And they come on the weekend and empty trash and do everything else. That's it. They don't come here every day. So when we have a meeting in here, it tends to impact the supplies, the cleanliness, and the garbage collection, which we empty ourselves. We take care of the garbage stuff. But anyway, so we're going to look at it when Debbie gets back. The other part of it is the technical support. Everybody wants to use all this equipment, and we have to explain how to use it, which we should be able to, but anyway. Enough of me whining.
So any other hot things anybody wants to talk about, or pushing up on our hour and a half that we allowed ourselves, and we could stay later?
Just the one I was looking at is that 124. I don't understand what that's about.
Oh.
How the borough become a licensed AT&T?
By the way, that is not just from someone else, that is actually mine. I wrote that because it pissed me off one day.
I noticed all
Okay.
these with
So we can cross that one off the list?
You can cross it off. This is literally for me. Okay, AT&T will not mail, as all of you have experienced, will not mail a phone or a SIM card to Petersburg. You have to have a physical address. You can play all sorts of games to get a physical address, but AT&T eventually catches on, and then, because they marked at one point the post office
1201 Hagen Drive.
as a fraud location. They wouldn't ship stuff there anymore. So everybody in town, if you haven't watched Facebook, fights this battle constantly.
Yeah.
So I approached TU and said, hey, somebody told me at one time you were an AT&T dealer, and because here's what's crazy. This is a borough phone. They mailed it right to us. No problem whatsoever. It's a commercial account, so AT&T has no problem mailing it to us, to a PO box. So I braced AT&T about it, and they promised to do something, and then they just ignored me. I talked to TU, and no, it just got too expensive to be an AT&T dealer or whatever reason. I think it was when they were part of Radio Shack.
Yep.
So when they lost the Radio Shack thing, they dropped AT&T. So, you know, it's a big inconvenience to anybody in town that has an AT&T phone or wants, you know. So I put it on there purely, it was like, okay, fine. You know, maybe we need to set this up for the library to make money, and they could be have a little section where they sell AT&T stuff. And
A little kiosk, you got.
yeah, a little kiosk, and AT&T will then mail them the phones, and people can go pick up their phones in the library.
Just put it in that small conference room on the.
Sure, anyway, that's where that came from. So yes, you can take that off the list.
I think it's a good idea and needs to stay on.
Fair enough. I've not done much else since I did the TU thing and the yelling at AT&T.
GC, that might not be happy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if their service was a little better in certain areas.
That just covers most of the stuff I have.
There's a lot of good things on here, though. That's it.
I mean,
Put on the list, you know, when the time comes, we'll bring it out and warm it up.
What helps is, I mean, you guys have given me enough to work on. What helps is not trying to go through every item of this list and give you the long 4-paragraph explanation. Hitting these a few at a time, where we go and do the research, bring it back, the assembly says, yeah, that's good. No, that didn't work out. Get rid of it. Is the biggest help to us. So, you know, it's really difficult to take 131 items and give you guys anything really meaningful. I can do it, you know, still probably more than I want, but, you know, we can look at the fees, we're gonna work on the borough land sale thing, and so we get that organized. We can look at some of these others and kind of just work through the list.
So,
I mean,
also I like the ATV one.
Sure.
Obviously, it failed in a vote, but I feel the reasons against it were not, they weren't good reasons. They're hard to see, so are motorcycles. They're noisy, so are diesel trucks. Do we have any restrictions on those things?
You don't know why people voted the way they did.
I know why they voted the way they did.
You interviewed everybody who voted no? Yeah, I'm being somewhat satirical, I'm not trying to bust your chops on that, but like, you never know what somebody does in the voting booth or why they did. I heard the same, I mean, I signed the petitions, I'm not trying to argue with you on the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know why they did.
Any one of you, if you want to put it back on an agenda and make it, if 4 of you vote for it, and we'll write the ordinance.
so, yeah, so maybe,
It was on the ballot.
It wasn't about
yeah.
an ordinance, yeah.
yeah. Would you get Jody to look into what the values of the seniors' property tax exemption looks like compared to what we're getting from the state?
She's got that almost on the top of her head.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Now,
I'd be really curious as to if we're
It's about, used to be in our favor.
Yes.
So we were getting over
Right.
500,000 a year,
Right.
and the property tax exemption was, I think, about 400K.
Okay.
I think it's, we're getting about 322 now on revenue sharing, and I think the property tax exemption's actually gone up a little bit, but she's got that written down.
Not a drill.
Fire department is used at 1307.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for what you do.
No, thank you.
That help?
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
Perfect.
Is the meeting over?
Sure.
I think so, it's at 8 o'clock?
No, not quite. Close enough.
Let's, yeah. If there's other discussion that people want to talk about, I mean, it seems like,
Other than this list?
oh, no.
It's only about this list.
No, just this list, that's what we were,
Just wondering,
Going once,
that's
I'm
what's on.
trying to whether I stop the meeting. Once, twice, 3 times, meeting's
We're
over.
done. We're done. Good.
I do like the idea with the pet center.
Well, you mean the pet?